Everyone, welcome. Thank you so much. Welcome to Blue and Gold Virtual Bartending with the Notre Dame Club of Pittsburgh. This is Notre Dame AALC week. So this is a special event that the AA has coordinated with us. I want to thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Dan Yu. I'm with the Notre Dame Club of Pittsburgh board. We are here with John Barsic, who is our resident mixologist. He has had a series of virtual bartending, which is available on our YouTube channel. Please check it out. So from here, I will turn it over to John. John is in his basement, and I am sort of live from the top of the Hesburgh Library, but we want to thank you all for joining us. And John, thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, Dan, and thank you to everyone who is joining us this evening. So this is, as Dan mentioned, a special edition that was designed to coincide with what would normally be the blue and gold football game. And I understand it's actually going to be May 1st, but by the time we get there, we'll know how to make some blue and gold and football themed drinks. So before we start, I've got some acknowledgements, and these are all the people that have made this possible. And we'll start with the members of the executive board at the Notre Dame Club of Pittsburgh. So Marley Williams and Carrie Boehner, who are the president and president emeritus, and Dan Yu, who is actually moderating this evening, is our vice president. So we have had enormous support from the executive leadership of the Club of Pittsburgh, and that has enabled us to start this and continue it. And the people who actually came up with the idea were actually our young alum. So Mara Boston, this is actually her idea when the pandemic hit. How are we going to keep we normally had monthly happy hours. Well, how are we going to keep that alive when we can't have live events? So this was our way. This was our answer to that, and this was kind of her idea initially. And her and another young alum, Willie Crawford, have been instrumental. They've done all the technical work in getting our Zooms and archiving, as Dan mentioned, they're available. The recordings are archived, so and posting in social media, advertising the events. So they've been instrumental as well. And all of the people from the Notre Dame Club of Pittsburgh have been enthusiastic participants. We thought maybe we'd have 1 or 2 episodes, but we had more than that as the pandemic went on, and we still couldn't have live events to support our camaraderie. And so there's outside of Pittsburgh, even Michael Brooker and the members of the Notre Dame Club of Greensburg and Uniontown are also participants at times. And so we appreciate everyone who's been a part of this. And last but not least, in our audience today, actually I have some special guests, and don't worry, we've all had our COVID shots. I'll introduce, this is John Barsic and Annette
Barsic Senior. Glad to see everybody. Go Irish.
This is Annette Barsic, better known as Mom and Dad. And these are the folks who made the commitment to put me through Notre Dame. So obviously wouldn't be here without them. So and the other member of our audience is my wife, Steph, and she has a very important role, especially in quality control. So if I have a drink that is not verbatim from a classic time-tested recipe, the first thing I do is give it to her. And I know immediately whether the drink is good or not, because she does not pull punches. So that is the members of the audience this evening. They'll taste test some of them as we go along, but wanted to acknowledge them as well. So thank you to everyone that I just mentioned, and I'll put the camera back where it was. Can you kind of see if that's... Thanks to everyone for making this possible. If you enjoy the programming, this is everyone who's made it possible. And so when we talk about alcohol, we always like to start with a message about alcohol safety. And most of the people who have attended before, they've heard a lot of these themes before, but it boils down to consume alcohol responsibly, serve it responsibly, and then get home responsibly. Those are the things. You have to know your limits and know your guests' limits if you're serving alcohol. And we use rule of thumb, a standard serving size of alcohol for that. So that's 12 ounces of beer, average beer, 5% alcohol. 4 ounces of wine, or 1 1/4 ounce of 80 proof liquor. That's 40% alcohol by volume. And most of the liquors that we deal with are 80 proof. All the ones up here, with the exception of triple sec, which is a lower proof alcohol. But it gets a little trickier when you're working with spirits, because you have to know the strength of the spirit and you have to know how much is in the drinks, because some of the drinks that we'll be working with tonight have 2 or maybe 2.5 standard serving sizes. And a standard serving size was contrived such that the average adult would be able to metabolize 1 standard serving size in the course of an hour. So if you have a drink with 1 standard serving size, an hour later, your blood alcohol will be back to normal. So you can use that as a guide. And I realize you're probably not going to remember any of what I say. So I want to drive this home. I am not good at making it memorable or humorous with a topic as serious as alcohol safety, but I know someone who does. And I think we all know who we're talking about. And if not, you will in a second here. So if you don't remember my words, remember what Sergeant McCarthy has to say on the subject. Okay, so that is a very poignant message, and it's very telling that Sergeant McCarthy chose his first and that was actually his last message when he retired to the Notre Dame Stadium. He chose the topic of impaired driving because it's very important. So please remember his words and consume responsibly, and if you're serving, serve responsibly. So how do we serve? If you are an amateur bartender or you don't have any experience at all, you'll get a little bit of the basics tonight. And if you've been in our audience before, this will be a little bit of a review for the first couple minutes, so bear with us. And it's going to go very quickly. So if you have questions, you can send them into Dan. We also have some episodes that are dedicated to certain topics. If you go find them, they'll elaborate on them. Or if you have questions afterwards, you can certainly address them. But this is a basic bar setup that you see in front of you here. And the ingredients that you're going to have in a bar setup, you're going to have what we call the 5 clears. So there's 5 liquors that are, if you have these 5 liquors plus whiskey, you'll be able to make several dozen classic drinks with just what you see in front of you. So for maybe $150 of ingredients, you can make dozens of drinks. And all of this stuff will keep for years. So if you don't drink a lot, if you don't serve or host a lot, you will have these at the ready for whenever you do have guests in the future. If you know what you're doing, you can combine these liquors to make a lot of different classic drinks or put some twists on them. Some of the drinks that we have tonight are twists on classics, and a couple of them are originals that we of course had to get stuff to approve since they're kind of new drinks. But in any event, the 5 clears are gin, rum, tequila, triple sec, and vodka, and then we also have whiskey. So if you have those 5 clear ingredients, you'll be able to have a basic bar setup. Now I'm going to move these out of the way. We'll use them later. But there's a couple other things that I want to show you in standard bar setup before we start. In addition to your liquors, you're going to have a couple of mixers. This is just sweet and sour mix. These are shortcuts. You can make this from scratch with simple sugar and lemon juice, but if you have this, you can put it in your refrigerator. It lasts a long time when refrigerated, and it's a shortcut. There's things like sweetened lime juice and grenadine syrup you can also have. So these are the mixing drinks for the mixers that you can have that'll complement your bar set. So So we'll go over a couple other items. So this, of course, the shaker. This is a very important tool. You'll use this a lot. They come in different sizes. The larger ones are good for mixing like multiple drinks. So if you're mixing for a couple people, you can make one batch and pour them out. This is a size that's roughly good for one serving. There's about 12 ounces in there. So with the ice, it's a good serving size for most drinks. This is a measuring glass, and although we're going to go over a technique called free pouring that is going to help you measure your drinks out without using any sort of measurement device, this is handy for items that you can't free pour. So we have some things like when you're squeezing lemon juice or something like that, and you need to measure a quantity. It's good to have something with a measuring line on it. So we've got some oversight. So ice is always very important. So we'll pull this out of our freezer. And we'll get some ice ready. And in addition to our regular ice, we have a number of different, these are novelty large ice cubes. So they come in a couple different varieties. There are some that are globe shaped. You can get ice cube makers like this that'll freeze and make a spherical shape, and then large cubes. The idea behind the large ice is that it will melt more slowly with more surface area, so it will dilute your drinks less, and they look really nice whenever you put them into drinks. So we'll see that a couple times this evening. And so we have some glassware here, a couple of the classics, and you'll see most of these this evening. This is the rocks glass. It's just a short cylindrical glass. This is an old-fashioned glass, so it looks kind of like a rocks glass, but it has flared sides. So it's shaped sort of like a V. And this is becoming popular as old-fashions have become very popular. The next set of glasses here, these are Collins glasses. So a Collins glass is just a taller cylindrical glass. And they also, this is a kind of a flared Collins glass. If they're a little more cylindrical and a little thicker than a Collins glass, that's when you get into a highball glass. So a highball glass would be like where you mix a soda with a spirit. So like think rum and Coke. That would be a highball. But these are Collins glasses that are used both decoratively, and there's a purpose because when you stack the ice like this, again, it keeps your drink cold without too much ice melt. This, I think everyone will recognize, is a martini glass. And this is a margarita glass. It looks sort of like a martini glass. It has some contours to it. This is a champagne flute and a coupe. So they are both associated with champagnes and wines. And we'll see these used in a different context, the coupe in a different context than you're probably normally used to seeing it. And these are snifters. So we won't really be using these tonight. I almost used it in the last drink, and then I decided to use a different shaped glass because in the final drink that we make this evening, we'll be simulating the shape of a football. So that's close, but I found a glass that's even a little closer to the shape of a football when we're done. So, but these snifters, the idea behind them is they constrict the flow at the top, so you can kind of whatever you have in here. Typically, you would use these with a high-end bourbon or cognac, and kind of swirl it around, and you get the scent of the liquor. And so that's what these are typically used for. You typically serve it neat or with just some very small amount of water, ice, when you serve a higher-ended liquor. So I'm going to move all of these glasses out of the way so that we have room here. And you can see, because sometimes you get a little cluttered, and it's hard to see what I'm doing. Okay. So the last thing that I want to go through before we get into the actual drink making is free pouring, because this is a very useful technique. So what that is when you see a bartender, they're not constantly taking and measuring, because if you're serving a lot of people, they may have to serve 60 or 100 drinks an hour. They do not have time to measure everything out, squeeze everything. So they use a lot of shortcuts if you watch a bartender. Probably the most useful and one that you can learn to do pretty easily yourself is free pouring. So what I would recommend is get a a empty liquor bottle, fill it with water about 3/4 way. So this is an old Absolute vodka bottle. There's just water in here. And so this is what I used to practice with. So free pouring is typically done in a 4 count. And what you can do to hone that in, you can just count 1, 2, 3, 4. As soon as and that should be 1 ounce. So as soon as the liquor starts coming out of the spout, you start the 1, and then you turn the bottle up whenever you hit the 4. And if you're musically inclined, there are, or more specifically, if you're not musically inclined, you can get a metronome app on your phone. And what I found is that if you set the metronome to about 100 beats per minute, that will get your 4 count, or it may be the shape of your pour stop may be different. The alcohol you're pouring might be a little bit, the consistency may be a little different. So you can hone in for yourself, but I put it on 100 beats per minute and it's pretty true to form. So 1, 2, 3, 4, up. And when we measure it, this should be about 1 ounce. And just so that I didn't cheat, there you go. It's pretty close to 1 ounce. And the power of this technique is that, all right, I'm going to turn the metronome off. The power of this technique is that you can use multiples. So if you need 3 ounces of liquor, 12 counts. If you need 1/4 ounce, 1 count. If you need 1 3/4 ounce, you use 7 counts. So you just use multiples of whatever the amount of liquor you're going to use. It also works with additives as well, not just liquor bottles. Some of them, if they have a neck that will fit a standard pour stop, you can also use it with like your sweeteners, like the Rose's lime juice. This is sweetening lime juice. So you can pour almost anything out in this manner. And when you're practicing again, I recommend using water and just practice a bunch of different multiples and see if you can hit it on the line and calibrate yourself. Do it in an opaque glass so that you don't know what's going in until you pour it out into your measuring and see how accurate you are. Okay, so that was a very brief intro for those who have not done any bartending before. It was a review for the folks who have been with us before, so thanks for bearing with us. And now we'll get to the actual drinks. So the first and last drinks on this list, and Dan, I believe you have the list or the ingredients that's available to show. Is that right?
Yes, I do. Which one will you do first?
Yep. So if you want to follow along, we're going to do a couple of these, and I'm going to kind of do a scheme here to color code it for you. So these are the way that I kind of designed these drinks. I wanted to get drinks that were blue and gold and like true to form, and then blue and gold drinks that you would kind of see normally. And then we're going to get some football colored drinks. So the first set of drinks is going to be the truest to color, and these will be some very big cocktail napkins. So the color of the 2017 shirt, which is navy and pretty close to true gold on the football players, that will be the first 2 drinks that were made. Then when we get into the second set of drinks, we're going to get into a little more abstract colors. So think the 2016 shirt. So these drinks are going to be more like that shade of blue. And then they've never actually done a true gold shirt. I remember, I think it was the late 90s, early 2000s. There was like a kind of a yellowish mustard colored shirt. I couldn't find that one with me, but we'll have drinks that are sort of that color. And then we'll get into drinks that are green, and the green, we're not going to get quite as green as the 2018 shirt, but we'll get as close as we can. So think the 2015 shirt. So that's the color scheme that we have. And then the final 2 drinks that we have, because we're using Godiva liqueur and Irish cream liqueur, are going to be football colored. So that's kind of how we're going to lay these drinks out as we go along. So the first one that we have is called the home game quarterback. And so the attempt here was to make a drink that is as close to Notre Dame blue as possible, so dark blue. Not all that easy to find in drinks, but what we were able to do is create the illusion So I'm making a couple workarounds. And if you pay attention to this, to what's really in this drink is actually essentially a cosmopolitan. Because what's going to be in it is vodka. There's going to be a blue curacao, which is essentially triple sec. It's a very similar liqueur to triple sec, which is also a cosmopolitan, but it's blue. And then to make it dark blue, we have to add another ingredient, and that is going to be pomegranate juice. Or if you don't have pomegranate juice, you can use that grenadine syrup that I had mentioned. So that's what we're going to have. We're going to have vodka. We're going to have blue curacao, which is triple sec. It's one of the 5 clears, but it has blue dye in it. And we're going to have vodka. So the first thing we'll do is we'll add some ice to our shaker. And then we are going to, so we do 1.5 ounces of vodka. So if you remember the technique, that's going to be 6 counts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we're going to have 1 ounce of blue curacao. So this is 4 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to have 1/2 ounce of the sweetened lime juice. So that's 2 counts. If you can get it into a bottle that has, you can pre-pour from, that's two counts because it's 1/2 ounce. 1, 2. And this stuff is very powerful, by the way. So go sparingly on it and follow the recipe, or else if you put too much of the sweetened lime juice, it'll make a very tart drink. So we're going to use the pomegranate juice. I think it makes it an even better color than the grenadine syrup. So a pour spout would not fit into this bottle of POM, so I'm just going to measure it out with our measuring glass at 1/2 ounce. And when we put this in, and usually when you shake around 20 or 30 seconds to get all the flavors melted. You'll see that the outside, if you're using a metal shaker, you'll see the outside of the shaker starts to get frosty like that, and that's when you let it set for a second, and then you will put it into your glass. So this particular glass, I garnished it ahead of time because it takes a little while, but this is our home game quarterback. When we pour it into our glass, you're going to see that the color of the shirt is pretty close to 2000. What did I say this was? The 2017 shirt, which is Notre Dame blue. So I'll bring this a little closer to the camera so you can see it. It's a little bit dark. And what we've done here is, in addition to customizing the color of our liquor, if you can set this down and see it. In addition to making our liquor a navy color, we've added some items that will help us image the quarterback. So we've got a half a lemon, an entire half, coated with honey, and then we use a baking sugar. These are gold baking sugar. You put that on there, and it gives the image of the helmet. And then a few of the flakes, if you can see that, go into the liquid, and it gives you kind of a neat effect. It's a blue and gold effect. And then you can just use pipe cleaners and borrow these from my daughter's craft box. And these are leftover. They're actually from Easter, but I always used to call them footballs. So we use the gold football and put it in our quarterback's hand, and there's our first drink. So we'll set this here.
John, I think Steph should taste test that one.
She, I think, is upstairs with the kids, and she absolutely will the second she gets back here. This was approved by her, by the way. So this, and you probably can't see me because I'm gonna tilt it back up. But yes, the home game quarterback was approved, and it does taste sort of like a sweeter or tartar Cosmo. And we'll move on to the second the second drink, which we were attempting to get as close to gold as we possibly can. And the way we're going to do that is with a liquor that most of us have heard of, Goldschlager. Now, there are actually real gold flecks in here, so that's going to help our cause in terms of the presentation, making it look gold. But I'll warn you, this is a very powerful drink, so it is going to overpower with the taste of cinnamon almost anything that you use with it. So we're going to try to offset that and make the drink a little better. Now, the reason we call it a halo is when we're finished, we're going to end up with a glass that's rimmed with that gold baking sugar like that. So technique for doing that. And this, I'm going to do rimming once, and you're going to see it a couple times this evening. So if we get the camera down, this is just a little puddle of honey. You could use corn syrup. The other way you can do it, you can take a lemon slice or a lime wedge and just run it along the top of whatever you're rimming. This works particularly well because this is fine gold dust, so you just kind of stick it in there, and then you can put it directly into the sugar, and you kind of swirl it around so that you get it both on the inside and outside. And what you'll end up with is a nice halo shaped rim. And make sure that you don't make the rookie mistake that I made a couple times. Make sure if you're going to rim a glass, rim it first before you put any ice or any ingredients in it. Here's Steph. So I think we need you to taste test our football, our home game quarterback. See what you think of that.
That's a good one. Good one.
It's very dark blue, but it still tastes like a Cosmo.
Yep, pretty nice.
All right, so we're on to the halo. And so for this one, we're actually going to just pour, as I said, you don't need a lot of Goldschlager. All we're really trying to do, shake it up so that you get some of the gold flecks, and really just 1/4 of an ounce. Don't use any more than that because it'll overpower everything else. So just a 1 count, so 1, and that's going to go directly into the glass. And you can see, well, you can't see it from there, but I'll show you eventually. There are some gold. We got some gold flecks in there, so we got our gold. All right, then you're going to use, you have a couple options with this. You can use whipped cream vodka. That gives you, I think, the best taste. But you could also use vanilla vodka. If you use vanilla vodka, it tastes like apple pie. So that might actually be a pretty good fall game drink because you get the taste of apple pie. It'll be very seasonal. But for now, we're going to use whipped cream vodka, which is very sweet, although it's pretty close to full strength vodka. This is still 70 proof, so it's almost full strength vodka. It's just a little sweeter. And we're going to use 1 ounce of this to offset the very cinnamony taste of the Goldschlager. So pour directly in 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to top it with some champagne. And I don't need a lot, so I just got one of these little mini bottles, and we'll open it here. All right, and I'll warn you that you got to pour slowly because you want to get the bubbly effect, but you don't want to go so high that you touch the gold halo, because if you do, it'll start dissolving the sugar and it'll get yellow, like a yellow streak in your drink, which is okay, but this is a little better. The bubbles help lift. You can see the gold flecks floating around in there. So the bubbles are helping to lift them. They'll eventually settle back down into the bottom of the glass. But again, this is as close as I could get a real gold themed cocktail. So now we have our true Notre Dame blue and gold set of cocktails. So now, as I said, we're going to get into the cocktails that are a little more, as I said, like the 2016 shirt. So think more like this color coming up next. So the drink that we're going to do next. Okay, so I rimmed it ahead of time. I showed you how to rim a glass. you're going to rim a glass, a coupe. This is the coupe that I mentioned, normally associated with champagne, but we're going to use it a little differently. We're going to rim it with white sugar, white baking sugar. And the name of this drink is St. Mary's Lake in winter. So what we're going to use for it is I'll rinse my shaker out real quick. Get some more ice. And as I mentioned before, blue curacao is kind of the bluest standard cocktail that mixer that you're going to get. So that's going to be the workhorse here. There is an alternate recipe that I found. It's a little trickier, so I'll save that for next. But basically what you're going to do on this is just a 1-to-1 ratio of blue curacao, and you can use Grand Marnier or Cointreau. Both of those are orange flavored liqueurs, and the blue curacao, which is a derivative of triple sec, is also an orange flavored liqueur. So what we're going for here is kind of like an orange creamsicle once we're done with it. So we're going to mix 1 ounce of each. So we'll do them both at the same time. We'll do a 4 count. 1, 2, 3, 4. For the blue, and we will shake this up in the shaker. And we'll carefully pour it in, so we try not to knock off the rim. And I'm actually going to add just a little bit more of the blue curacao. Give that a deeper blue. That looks right. And then here is another trick with this one, and this is a technique that we learned when during the St. Patrick's Day episode when we made Irish coffee. So you're going to float some cream on top of the cocktail. So I'm going to do it here so you can see it. I'll get the camera, hold it down. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some heavy cream, or it'll work with half and half, but heavy cream works a little better. So it's hard to free pour heavy cream. So I'm going to use a measuring glass I have here somewhere. Oh, there it is. So I'm going to use an ounce of heavy cream and transfer it into something that we can whip or whisk, and then just a little bit of table sugar. So give a little 1/4 teaspoon table sugar, maybe a 1/2 teaspoon, just to sweeten the cream a little bit. Then we'll whip it, and you don't want to whip it all the way to the point where it's like whipped cream and stiff. You just want to get it a little bit of air into that so that it's fluffy and so that it'll float on top of our drink. And again, this is the same technique that you would use to apply a float to an Irish coffee. And the key here is to do it very slowly, or some people do it over the back of a spoon. So we'll get a tablespoon here and do that over the back of the spoon. And if we do it right and we don't pour too fast, this will float on top of our drink. And this technique also works. We had used it when we were making, when we made a B52 shot, which a B52 shot is Bailey's, Grand Marnier, and Kahlua. And because those liquors all have different specific gravities, they will layer nicely. So that's what's happening here with this drink. You can see that we have St. Mary's Lake with a nice ice on the top of it and some snow. And it's an orange creamsicle effect because we've got orange in both the Grand Marnier and the blue curacao. And then we have the cream, of course, with heavy cream and the sugar. And that should give you a orange creamsicle flavored drink. So I don't know if we have any volunteers, but there we are. You like to try it, Mom? There you are. And turn it around and see if it's legit. Cheers. All right. So we'll put this back up here. So there's our first blue-ish drink. The next one that we have is, and we'll check the time here, we still have good time. The next one is a pale gold drink, and this one is a twist on a whiskey sour. And so we're calling it Gold Rush. And so we're going to use that large ice cube that we talked about. So in this case, we're going to start out by selecting a nice cube of ice. One of these big ones like this, and we're going to put it in an old-fashioned glass and try to get it to kind of tilt up like that. And we'll start there. Trying to move these over so we can see what we're doing. I'll try to clear some of this stuff out. Put it back in. And by the way, the other liquor that you could use for that St. Mary's Lake is there's a liquor out there called Hypnotic, and it's kind of tasty, and it's a citrusy, fruity type of punch drink. That will also work well. If you use Hypnotic, lay off of the Cointreau or the Grand Marnier, because that's yellow, and you'll get a very green St. Mary's Lake if you use Hypnotic instead of Blue Curacao, because Blue Curacao is much fuller. So for this drink, we're going to use Bushmills Irish whiskey. We're going to use lemon juice. So we could either use fresh squeezed lemon juice, or we could just use this stuff right here, like this real lemon. And then you're also going to use, this is something you should have to prepare ahead of time, but it's very easy. So simple sugar, which you can either buy or make yourself, is really just a 1-to-1 mix of sugar and water. You heat it, and when the sugar all dissolves, you have a liquid, and when you pour it into your drink, it's like that iced tea effect where you can never get all the sugar dissolved because it's cold. You've pre-dissolved your sugar, and so now you can pour it into your drink and not have to worry about the sugar crystallizing and falling to the bottom. This is, we're doing the same thing with honey. So a 1-to-1 mix of honey and water will get you honey syrup, and that's what we're going to use for this drink. And it's a different taste. It's lighter and refreshing, and it also kind of it helps with the gold color. So all of the ingredients here are yellowish with gold in color. So we're going to clean out our shaker. Add some more ice. And we're going to start with 2 ounces of Bushmills whiskey. You can use any whiskey, really. I'm choosing Irish whiskey here, and the yellowest or goldest Irish whiskey I could find. So we're going to use 2 ounces, so that's 8 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we're going to use, I can't free pour this out of what I have here, so I'm going to measure it. We're going to use 3/4 of an ounce of the honey syrup, which is, again, a 1-to-1 mix of water and honey. You can, if you heat it for a little bit, it will dissolve very easily, and then it'll stay dissolved. You can put it in your refrigerator. And then the other ingredient in here, and normally I use fresh squeezed lemon juice. I guess I could try to do that. It won't take too long, so I'll just make sure that it gets all the way up to 1.5 ounces, because we're going to use 3/4 of each. If I can't get it all out of this lemon, looks like we'll get there. All right, so we have 3/4 of an ounce of honey syrup and 3/4 of an ounce of lemon. Add that to our shaker. I'm going to shake this up for a little bit. And then we're going to pour it into our old-fashioned glass with the oversized ice cube in it. And when it settles, we're going to get a pale yellow Gold Rush. And to kind of finish the garnish on this one, what you'll see a lot of bartenders do, especially when they're making old fashions now, they love to use these oversized ice cubes. And what I've seen a couple of them do, point that down, is they'll drizzle whatever syrup that they have, or an off-color syrup, directly onto the ice cube, and it makes kind of a nice pattern. So I'm going to take some of the honey and just drizzle it onto the ice cube, and some of it will stay, some of it will go into your drink and make it sweeter. And by the way, if you want an even sweeter whiskey sour, Bushmills also makes a product called Irish honey, which is an even sweeter whiskey. It's still foolproof whiskey, but it just has a honey flavor in it to start. And so you can do that. Some of the honey will actually kind of freeze and stick to the ice cube. That ice cube, because it's so large, will melt very slowly. It won't water this drink down. And for this one, I think we'll have Dad try that, because you are a whiskey guy. See how that is. Come on, Paz will come around front here and sit.
Very good. Perfect drink.
All right. Sure that's objective. Yes, you may. I'm sure that's a completely objective.
Here for now.
All right, yeah, we can share afterwards. So that the next two that we have, we got about 15 minutes left in the hour. So we got 4 more drinks to try to fit in here. So the next one is, this one is a very close to an original, or to a timeless recipe. So we're calling it South Bend iced tea. We did this one during our tailgating episode. We're going to do it again here, because this one is one of the ones that we can easily turn green. And so this one is a neat one to do, because you can really show the power of the free pouring technique with this drink. Because we have this in this drink, we have 5 liquors. We're going to have all 5 clears that I mentioned before. So we're going to put gin, rum, tequila, triple sec, and vodka all into this drink. But at the end, we're going to add a little twist, because in addition to the lime and the sweet and sour mix that you would normally put in a Long Island iced tea, we're going to add a very tiny amount of our blue curacao, and that is going to give us the green tint that calls this, that enables us to make it green. While South Bend iced tea, there is an alternate version out there. It uses a liquor called Midori. That's a Japanese liquor. So the reason I didn't choose that is because the drink has already been invented. It is so we can't claim that. If you use Midori, it's a melon flavored liqueur. Just substitute the Midori for the triple sec. You'll get a green drink, but in that case, it's called a Tokyo iced tea, because that was invented probably in the 80s. And that was at the time the answer to the Long Island iced tea, and it's a green drink. So we're going to do it a little differently and get our South Bend version. So the Long Island iced tea, again, we'll start with our ice. And here's where, if you do this right, you can get all 5 liquors in there at once. So you just got to do it carefully. So there's our vodka. Here's our triple sec. Here is our tequila. Here is our gin, and here is our rum, white rum. So this drink has a reputation for being very powerful, but if you pour it responsibly, again, it really is there's really no more liquor in here than there is in a lot of other drinks, because if you think about it, there's going to be a ½ ounce of each of these liquors. So that's between the 4 standard liquors that are 80 proof. That's a little less than 2 servings. You're going to have that's about 2 servings, and then you're going to have a little bit more. The triple sec is a lower proof. It's about 35 proof. So you're going to have a ½ ounce of that and a ½ ounce of each of the other ones. So if you pour it in that quantity, it will not be it does get a reputation for being a very powerful drink, but that's because in bar settings, a lot of times they'll pour like a full ounce of each. So 4 counts of all 5 of these liquors, and because they want to sell like a $15 drink, which you have to have 5 ounces of liquor to make it a $15 drink. But when you're pouring it for home, if you make it this way, it's you can serve it and you're not going to get too out of control. So I recommend practicing this. If you can get all 5 of them in your hands, you can get them all into the glass for the 2 count. So we'll try that. 1, 2, and up. And we got most of it in there. So that's all 5 of our liqueurs. And we are going to shake this up. We're going to serve it in our, call it a kind of a modified Collins glass. It's got a little contour to it, but it's pretty close to a Collins glass. And we're going to use another couple of our, we're going to make it interesting. We'll use a couple of our ice cubes. We'll use a sphere, and then we'll use a cube on top of that sphere, if we can get it in. And then we'll use another sphere. And then we're going to put our straw in there to make sure we room for it. And we'll pour the liquor in. And you'll see that's pretty clear. So normally, a Long Island iced tea, you would top this almost all the way up. So 2 to 3 ounces of your sweet and sour mix. So you don't have to measure it exactly unless you want to measure it up. They typically come in these speed pour. This will not be, you can't do the free pour technique with these speed pours. They pour too fast. So in this case, we're just going to go top it all the way up, almost. We're going to leave a little bit of room for some soda because we splash it with like a 7-Up or a lemon lime soda, give it a little bit of a fizzy effect. So at this point, you're still at a standard Long Island iced tea. What you would do to finish it is you would just pour some Coke on top. That will give you the optical illusion that you're drinking brown iced tea. And we drink with our eyes before we even drink with our mouths. So we're going to think that we're tasting iced tea. Well, in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to change that up. We're going to put just a very small amount and do this incrementally. So we're going to start with 1/4 of a teaspoon, which we have here, of the blue curacao, and see what that does, because this gives us a little bit of yellow. So you just want to use a very small amount of blue. If we need just a little, that's almost enough. Maybe just a little more. But go very easy, because if you put too much of the blue curacao in, you're going to end up with a drink that is more aquamarine than green. So there is our South Bend iced tea. And usually you top it off with some lime soda, so we'll get some of that. And we'll get a fizzy topper for that lime soda. And then we're complete and stuff just in time. Would you like to try South Bend iced tea?
You know I love it. I know I love it. I like the big ice cube. That's good idea. We'll water it down.
Yeah, and just a little twist. Make it fun. And we'll try to get some of this stuff out of our way in. We used all 5 of our 5 clears in that one. And a little bit of tiny bit of blue curacao. And let's see, we have 10 minutes. So we will, this one it does the same thing. So we've got 10 minutes, but we've got 3 drinks to make. This is going to be the same thing that we did here, only with a margarita. So if you make a standard margarita and do what we just did, add a tiny 1/4 teaspoon of blue curacao to the margarita, what a bar would normally serve margarita, using sour mix, a little bit of lime juice, tequila. You can brim your glass with green baking sugar instead of salt, and that'll help your effect. So we're going to jump right to the last 2, which are our football colored drinks. And you're going to see with these, we also have a couple of garnish tricks. So that's one of the most important things that you can do to make your drinks is work on the garnish. Come up with something that's nice and presents well, and your guests will appreciate that. So we're going to do that with these football themed drinks. The first one is essentially just going to be a chocolate martini, but we're going to do some interesting things with it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to chill our glass in a freezer. And the reason we do that is we're going to take some chilled chocolate syrup and start out, before we even do anything, with some squiggles. You can go back and forth, make a waffle pattern. Now, because the liquor that we're going to be putting in here is brown, you're not going to see this as much, but this is a nice technique that you can use. If you're making a white chocolate martini, so Godiva also makes a white chocolate liqueur, that if you do that instead of the if you use that instead of the brown flavored liqueur that we're going to use, you'll be able to easily see any squiggles. You could also do that with raspberry syrup or any type of syrup to kind of make a base for your chocolate martini. And again, make sure you don't make the rookie mistake. Do that before you start adding anything to the glass, obviously, because otherwise it's very difficult to do after the fact. So this one is called Hike, and again, it's a twist on a classic chocolate martini. So for this one, we're going to use a 1-to-1 ratio of vodka and Godiva liqueur. You could also use, there's a number of combinations you can use with this. You can use chocolate vodka, which is a number of brands of chocolate vodka. It'll be more like that'll be really chocolatey. We're going to use regular vodka. And the only caveat with this drink, I need some more ice. Godiva is a cream-based liqueur, and sometimes when you add a cream-based liqueur to a higher proof alcohol like vodka or whiskey, you will get some curdling of the cream in the liqueur. So we can fix that. If it happens, I just need my vodka, which is here. So again, we're going to do 1.5 ounces of each of these. So that's going to be 6 counts. We'll do them at the same time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up. And so this is our drink. All right. So because of that coagulation or that curdling effect, we're going to run it through a strainer, and if there is any curdling, that will remove it. So it's not too bad, but okay. So now we have our football colored drink, but we're not done quite yet. So to continue the garnish with this one, we're going to add some whipped cream onto the top of it. Kind of mound it up almost like a little cone. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to again make use of our Easter candy from last week. So we have our chocolate Easter eggs, which look very much like footballs, and we're going to skewer them. They're going to be our olives. Now, there's a trick to this. Depending on what brand of Easter eggs or footballs that you have, you can kind of put it directly in the drink like that. It will float on the whipped cream, or if I want to rescue it, you can put it on the side and kind of use one of the footballs to rest it on your glass. Well, that one didn't work so well, so we have a backup. So we'll rest our olives on there, our chocolate football olives. And the trick with these is, depending on the brand you have and the type of chocolate, they're very difficult to skewer with a toothpick. So sometimes if you try to skewer them when they're at room temperature, they'll kind of crack and break. The trick is put them under a low wattage light bulb for half an hour. And if you do that, they'll heat up very gently and they'll skewer right through. I did that ahead of time just because if we try to do it now, they might crack at room temperature. So with that, if it's not during ordinary time, when it's not Easter, you can use Rolos. Rolos are easier to use because they have a caramel center. They're very easy to skewer because they won't crack. The caramel in the middle will help the toothpick. So if you're making a chocolate martini and you don't want to use football, you can use Rolos instead for chocolate olives. All right. And the final drink this evening, a couple minutes left. So this is the one that I mentioned. I found an even more football-shaped glass. So this one is called Laces Out. So the glass that I found, it's called a goblet glass. And it essentially looks like a very large wine glass that's been crunched down and the neck is very thick. So it kind of looks like a football, and we're going to get it all the way to look like a football our garnish. So we're going to start with the laces. So again, making sure that you try to get your laces in first. I'm going to kind of wipe the frost off of this so we can see it. And tilt that down. You're going to take, I found this is decorating gel. You can get this at Walmart or anywhere, any grocery store. You can use icing, but I found this decorating gel is easier to work with. So you're just going to squirt it in there in the pattern of football laces. So you're going to make a kind of a long vertical line. You double back on it. And then you're going to make the stitches. So you're going to go crosswise. So there is our laces for our football. So you can kind of see that from the outside. And when we add the liquor, the football colored liquor to it, it'll complete the effect of the laces. All right, so at this point, you're going to want to add the ice to your glass. And the reason we use ice in this case is not only to keep our drink cold, but this is a very large glass. If you try to fill this the entire way with liquor, that's going to be a lot. So for this one, we're going to use, of course, Irish cream liqueur. And this is actually, during the St. Patrick's Day episode, we made homemade Irish cream liqueur. So very similar to Bailey's. There's about 6 ingredients in it, but we said that, you know, Bailey's can keep for 24 months refrigerated or unrefrigerated, but we don't have a controlled process. We don't have the preservatives. So we were saying that ours will keep refrigerated for about 2 months. This is about a month old, so we're still, our homemade Bailey's is still good. And in this drink, clean out our shaker once more. Basically just going to take our Bailey's and we're going to spike it a little bit with some Irish whiskey. So we'll use Jameson for this one. We haven't used that yet, so we're going to use Jameson whiskey. I think that's what we originally made this with, so it'll stay consistent. And we're going to use about 4 ounces. But as I said, it's a large drink, but Bailey's is about 15 to 17% alcohol, so around 35 proof. So you can use more of it and still stay at around the 2.5 standard serving size per drink. So we're going to use a 16 count here because we're going to use 4 ounces of the Bailey's or of the Irish cream liqueur. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16. And then we're going to spike it with about 1 ounce of Jameson. So we're basically just going to, the beauty of making your own homemade Bailey's or homemade Irish cream liqueur is that you can customize it any way you want. You can emphasize the chocolate or the coffee or you could make it higher proof, add more whiskey to it. So that's what we're doing here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, you could have that curdling effect. So we're going to strain this into our glass. Oh, curdling so far. Catch a couple pieces. And as you can see, had we not added the ice to that glass, we would have had a glass half full. Even though this is quite a large volume of alcohol. You've got 5 total ounces, but it's still around the 2.5 standard servings of alcohol because of the lower proof of the cream liqueur. Now to complete the garnish and the illusion of the football here, we have a fun trick. So we'll bring our laces out up here and we'll get our model football. We need some whipped cream for 2 purposes. We'll make it look like the top ring, the top white ring that some footballs have. And we also need a base for the final ingredient. So you kind of just make a ring like that. to top off your drink. And the final piece of our laces out is a sugar cone. So this is going to be the tip of our football. So I did a couple of these ahead of time just in case it just doesn't work. But there's a couple of different ways you can do this. Can you see that? You just take a heavy kitchen knife and literally chop the end of a sugar cone off like this. Or if you want a little higher. Okay, so that will make our cone. This one's a little prettier, so we'll use it. So there's a couple different ways you could try that. You could try just snapping the tip off and maybe grating it with like a cheese grater. You put that on the top of your drink, float it on the whipped cream, and then you can add straw through the middle of the cone all the way down to the bottom. And that completes the illusion of a football. And you, of course, serve it laces out because we know that's how you're supposed to have a football facing when you kick a field goal. So who would like to try laces out? It has a lot of Baileys in it. Steph? All right. All right. So we are a couple minutes over, so I'll wrap it up there and open it to any questions that we had either in the chat box or if anyone has any now. Thanks for being with us tonight. Cheers, go Irish. We're looking forward to another great season with the blue and gold game as the starting point. And we will see you guys. If you want to join us in future events, you can check the Notre Dame Club of Pittsburgh website. We do have a spring bartending event planned with some spring and floral drinks that are themed for Cinco de Mayo, Mother's Day, and a couple of the spring celebrations that we'll have. So we have that event to look forward to. If you enjoyed this one, join us for that one. And thanks for being with us tonight. Dan, I'll turn it back over to you for any Q&A that we have.
All right. Well, thank you, John. What a pleasure. I hope everyone saw in the chat that I did copy the recipes. I will also cut and paste the original event listing on the Notre Dame Club of Pittsburgh website. You can find all the recipes there on that link right there. Again, John, what a pleasure. Thank you. This was, it was such a treat. I can't wait to come over and try some of those. I'm fully vaccinated, so I'll be right over. This has been a production of the Notre Dame Club of Pittsburgh. Follow us at ND Pit Club on Facebook, Twitter, ndpitclub.com, and Notre Dame Pit Club on Instagram. Any questions from the audience? Would love to hear them. Anybody? I can actually unmute everybody right now. If anybody would like to ask a question for John. So actually, I have a question for you, John. Most of the drinks have a very sweet nature to them. Is that like by design? Is that like something that you tend to like to put together?
These are kind of party themed drinks. So yeah, a lot of these are on the sweeter variety, and a lot of them were done that way because of the color and the theme that we wanted to achieve with them. So the couple of the episodes that we had focused in on different types of liquors. So that's where you would get ones that are a little more hardcore, a little more classic drinks. Most of these drinks are kind of classics or twist, or we did something to them to make them a little bit different than their classic presentation. We did that with a lot of sweet ingredients, like the blue curacao, the Baileys, and the Godiva inherently sweet. We did that because we had to get the football color. But this whiskey sour is probably, believe it or not, this drink right here are probably the closest to like a classic drink, even though there are sweet components to them. I'll move these kind of to the side. if you really dissect what goes into our home game quarterback, this is a kind of a classic cosmopolitan. And the reason being, it's got mostly vodka as the base. It has, instead of triple sec, it has blue curacao. Now, blue curacao is effectively equivalent to triple sec. They taste exactly the same. You blindfold taste tests, and you can't see the color. You probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference between triple sec and blue curacao. So really, the only thing we did differently is we used, instead of cranberry juice, we used a little darker component, and that got us the navy. So this is really, kind of even though cosmopolitans have the reputation of being a lighter drink, it's still a full-blown cocktail. This one as well, the Gold Rush, even though we have honey and different things in it, it has 2 ounces of whiskey in it. So that's a full stiff drink, and it's really just a twist on a whiskey sour. So the only thing different between a whiskey sour and this drink is, instead of using simple syrup, which you would normally use in the ratio with lemon juice, we're using honey. So a simple syrup made with honey instead of with sugar. So that's the only difference between this and a classic whiskey sour. So these 2 drinks are probably the closest to what you would consider classic cocktails, even though they do have sweet components. So if we want to see if we have any requests for any classic non-sweetened drinks, I'll be happy to do that. If anyone wants to stick around, I'll do that.
Gotcha. We do have a question from the audience. Rosemary asks, what is the recipe for the Irish cream liqueur?
All right. So I don't know if we have the St. Patrick's Day episode out there yet, but that's the first thing we did in the St. Patrick's Day episode. And so I'll try to go.
Rosemary, if you went to our YouTube page, you can find our episode up there probably soon. So
clearly, I need to get caught up. I've missed some.
If you make the Irish cream liqueur, I'd recommend making it as a batch, because some of the ingredients you use, you're going to use like cans of things. So it uses like almost 2 cups of whiskey, and we use Irish whiskey. I think we use Jameson's. But you're going to use you're going to get to pour this out and measure it. You're going to use like a measuring cup, like a big, I have one. Oh, there it is. So you're going to pour that whiskey into the measuring cup, and then you're going to have an entire 14-ounce can of sweetened condensed milk. That's going to give the drink its sweetness. And if you've never worked with that stuff before, it's very gooey. You got to scrape it in, so it's hard to work with. It's hard to make this in small quantities. You want to make a whole batch of it. So like about 2 cups of whiskey, a 14-ounce can of condensed sweetened sugar, 2 tablespoons of vanilla extract, about a tablespoon of powdered coffee. I think we used this espresso, 2 tablespoons of chocolate syrup, which we had here. Just you can use Hershey's or any chocolate syrup, or you could use like the barista's chocolate syrup. What am I missing? There's 6 ingredients. So we got the whiskey, the sweetened condensed milk. Oh, and there's about a cup of half and half. So in this case, I would not attempt to use the heavy cream. I would use half and half instead, because you're going to get less of that curdling and coagulation. You're still going to get some, so you're going to need to filter it and use a funnel to transfer it into maybe like a pourable bottle, which is what we did here. So at a high level, that's what you would do. But if you want to see the full demonstration, I believe that's in like the first 10 minutes of the St. Patrick's Day episode.
Great, thanks.
All right. Any other questions from the audience? We are here with John Barsic, our resident mixologist. He is at our disposal.
Any requests?
I had a question. I was wondering if you were having a party, what would be your go-to drinks that you would serve?
Okay, that's a complicated question because it's going to depend on your guests. It's going to depend on what you have or what you're willing to go buy. So is is this like a summer theme party, or what time of year? What do your guests like to drink? Can you answer those questions?
It's the party she's inviting all of us to.
Oh, all of us. Hey,
I was thinking, you know, if you're a complete beginner, what would you
yeah,
start?
if you are a complete beginner, okay, the very first thing we talked about when you're stocking your bar, you're going to want to stock your 5 clears. And again, don't buy the expensive high-end liquors of any of these. You can get versions of these from, like, don't get the lowest, you know, like the $8 bottle, but like you can get bottles of these from like the $15 to $20 price point. But you're going to want to get your 5 clears, which are gin, rum, tequila, triple sec, and vodka, and then get a bottle of whiskey. And it could be any type of whiskey. If you like Irish whiskey, I recommend Jameson or Bushmills. This is about $25. This is about $29 for 750 milliliter bottle. So for that modest investment, you have the ability to make a lot of different classic drinks. Now, if you're going to go for like a themed party, you may need to get some specialty liqueurs or additives like the Godiva. Like if your friends like chocolate martinis, you're going to need to get Godiva or a couple other different adders. You're going to need to consider any garnishes if you want to make it gimmicky, any special glasses. If you have a party and you're going to have a theme to it and you don't have a lot of glassware, I would recommend plastic glassware. Sometimes it's actually better, especially if you're at like the pool. You know, this is a martini glass. It's just like an acrylic type of plastic. It won't break, so you won't have to worry about that. If you have a spill, you just clean up the liquid. You get that adjusted back. They also have like packs of these. Party City used to be my go-to because they would have like huge packs of like, that's what this is actually. This margarita glass is just a plastic margarita glass, and you can get like a pack of like 10 of them or even 20 of them. You can use that. And so just because you can take these with you. So if you're having a tailgate, if you watch our tailgate episode, we had a lot of ideas on how to be portable, how to take the party with you. So plastic barware, I would recommend, especially if you don't have a large inventory of glassware, if you have like a certain type of drink you want to serve, but you don't have like 12 glasses of the type you want to serve it in, just get some plastic, either disposable or this isn't really disposable. I mean, I wash this out and use it a lot of times, but that's if you have that type of party. But again, the type of drink is going to depend on the type of guest. So if you start with that basic bar setup of the 5 clears and whiskey, you got a lot of options. Combine it with a couple adders, you open up your ideas. But if your friends like a particular type of liquor or a particular type of drink, or if you want to focus in on the season, so summer drinks are a little bit different. Vacation drinks are a little bit different, so you're going to have a lot of rums to those. Spring drinks, there's a lot of infusions that you can do. So the spring drinks might have herbal components. You can muddle them and infuse those into your cocktail. Again, with your base liqueurs, but you just add a few things to them, present them nicely, and you get drinks that would please the crowd. You can do a little research ahead of time and see what your guests want.
Yeah, I'm going to start practicing now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and that's the other thing too. Get a staff, someone who you can make your drinks ahead of time, practice, test them out, give them to someone who would not worry about hurting your feelings, and they'll tell you, this tastes terrible, or that's pretty good, but if you do this, it'll be perfect. So that's what you want to do ahead of time. And think about the volume too. So it's different if you have 2 friends or 3 friends over, or if you have like a dozen people. Think about the quantities. If you learn to free pour, you're going to open up a lot of doors because you're going to have a lot more time on your hands to chat with people as you're, instead of constantly being handcuffed to your measuring cup. If you learn a little bit of the free pour technique, that'll help you out too.
Nice, thank you.
Can you make any of these a pitcher at a time to serve in quantities?
Yes, that's basically exactly what we did when we made the homemade Baileys. We made a batch. So if you take the proportions of these ingredients and just scale them up, just do some multiplication. So, which drink are you thinking do you want to scale? I mean, people scale margaritas all the time. They make whole
Right.
margaritas.
Right.
When you're thinking of?
Yeah, the margarita or the whiskey sour. Could you?
You could. So yes, you can. And actually, another thing to take it even a step further, you can, if you want to make stuff ahead of time in batches like that, some of this stuff, if it's high enough proof, it will freeze well, and it will actually not even freeze. So I'll give you an example here. Perfect example. This is actually a frozen margarita, but it only freezes. So this, I'll start with this. This is as I was kind of fine tuning the recipe for that game day quarterback, or the darkest drink that we could make. I wanted to make sure I got the taste right, but I had a little bit left over. I can use this in the future. That's been in the freezer for a week, and it's you could still, it's just very cold. You can drink it right like that, or pour it right into the glass. So you can make a whole bunch of that and have it in a freezer. So sometimes I'll use like a pour top container like this, pour a whole bunch of it into a container like that, and just freeze it.
Exactly.
At worst, it will do this. So this makes kind of a slushy, but because there's still a fair amount of alcohol in there, this is really it's not frozen solid. It's like a slush. You could spoon it right out of this in about 2-3 minutes, even with just the heat of my hand right here. It's already almost ready to pour. So yes, if you want to make them ahead of time, the thing that I would recommend is making them in big batches, putting them in containers like this, where you kind of know, if you're going to have 20 people, just make like 20 or 25 servings in containers, pour containers like this, freeze them ahead of time, and then you'll be ready to go. You won't have to mess around with all of this during your event. You just pour it out. And again, we had a lot of tips on this in the tailgating episode. That was, we were going to have a tailgate for the pit game. We were hosting the ND pit game this year, but the event was canceled. So we did tailgating, and in that episode, again, we had a lot of drinks where we froze them or took them with us ahead of time. So this is a different type of drink that I made, and I just use it. I mean, steak keeps forever, especially in the freezer, but it's liquid. This is a drink that I made, I think, in the very first episode. It's called Independence Day, and this is another one where you're mixing red and green ingredients. So this uses, instead of pomegranate juice like our game day quarterback, this uses cranberry juice syrup. So not just cranberry juice, it needs to be a little darker than that. So where's my cranberry syrup? So like you can get like these Soda Stream adders. This is actually syrup. And so if you use that, so you're going to use a 1-to-1 ratio of vodka, blue curacao, and then you add a little bit of this cranberry syrup. It turns it purple, gives you kind of it's kind of red, white, and blue ingredients. So 4th of July. This you can pour out as like a shot or just like a sipping drink. But yeah, you can make a ton of this ahead of time, and then just whenever you get to your party, just kind of portion it out. And again, it'll keep for, like, if you don't use all of it at your party, it'll keep for a very long time in the freezer.
Thank you, everyone, for joining this evening. Again, you can follow us at ND Pit Club on Facebook and Twitter, at ndpitclub.com, and Notre Dame Pit Club on Instagram. Thanks very much. Have a good evening, and go Irish. Thank you, John. You're awesome.